Chapter 21, Unable to Let Go. Mom, why does this date still have a pit? During breakfast, Suro bit into a date with a pit, which puzzled her. She usually removed the pits to prevent the children from swallowing them before cooking. Her mother said, "This is a good sign. A newlywed girl eating it means she'll have a son soon. You, my dear, should have another noble child." Fang Hao was taken aback. It seemed his mother genuinely wanted another grandchild. In rural areas, the belief in more children, more blessings, was deeply rooted. Too bad I'm getting a divorce, having another child is out of the question. Besides, Suro has more than one man, it's uncertain whose child she would bear. She treats her lover so obediently and joyfully, theoretically, she might be more inclined to bear his child. "I can't be a happy father again," he said. "Mom, Shiro has to work, and I have a job too. Besides, we have 2 kids to take care of. There's no time for another child." Suro, however, said, "I'll listen to Mom. If it happens, I'll have the baby. By then, Mom has to come and help me take care of the child." Alright. Mother was very happy and gave her son a disapproving look, signaling him not to say anything. "If only you knew that Suro isn't as good as you think she is but completely rotten, you'd be furious if you found out about what she's done." Fang Hao sighed in his heart, finished breakfast, and went out for a while. He went to the retired teacher's apartment at the middle school, bought some things at the fruit shop at the entrance, and visited his former homeroom teacher and other teachers. During casual conversations, he subtly inquired about the person with whom the class flower, Qin Shuang, had an affair. It turned out to be the address of a Mediterranean-style teacher in the same high-end neighborhood where the class flower lived. As Fang Hao's car entered the neighborhood, he coincidentally met Qin Shuang, who had just returned from buying groceries. She stopped him. "Howsy, how did things go with Wei Wen? Did he forgive me?" The class flower asked directly, her eyes filled with hope. "This is not the place to talk. Let's go to your place for a few words." Fang Hao parked the car and walked with her. After pouring him a glass of water, the class flower asked directly, "Wei Wen hasn't forgiven me, has he?" Fang Hao asked in return, "Do you think Wei Wen should forgive you? But I know I was wrong. I've changed now. I won't see that person anymore, and I'll be wholeheartedly with Wei Wen. He loves me, and we still have a future. After he divorced, his situation was very bad, I know. Since he has me in his heart, why doesn't he reconcile with me? Why doesn't he give me a chance to change? Let Wei Wen go. Howsy, without Wei Wen, I don't know how to live. I'm very confused. After making a mistake, Wei Wen left me, and I realized I couldn't live without him. The outside world is so beautiful, but it's because I was in Wei Wen's car, protected by him. Now that he's gone, I feel very lonely and insecure. Oh, give Wei Wen some time." Fang Hao's heart stirred. In matters of infidelity, women might regret for a while but wouldn't blame themselves. His wife enjoyed a peaceful life outside with her lover because he managed everything at home, taking care of all household chores. He was a general practitioner and could easily handle minor illnesses like colds and fevers. As a house husband, he learned to cook and took care of the twins. He devoted himself to the family, but what did his wife do? She brought her lover home and messed around, leaving the children to the neighbors while she spent time with her lover. It had been 4 years, and the list of grievances was endless. Worthless woman, completely rotten. This marriage must end. Originally, Fang Hao wanted to find the jerk teacher who seduced Wei Wen and see what kind of person he was, and whether he had any shame left. However, the incident with Li Wei at the Provincial People's Hospital made him think twice. He had to be more cautious about protecting himself. If the old man got too agitated and had a heart attack, Fang Hao wouldn't be able to shirk responsibility. Dealing with the class flower's affair and seeking revenge was something Wei Wen should do. If Wei Wen didn't pursue the matter, it wasn't Fang Hao's place to stir things up as an outsider. Fang Hao also visited the hospital to inquire about job opportunities. However, there were no available positions. The possibility of transferring back to the county hospital was close to zero. In the county hospital, the director of a department had held the position for 10 years, and considering he was only 50, it meant he could continue for another decade. Other positions were also occupied by familiar faces. Once a doctor, always a doctor, and patients kept coming in. Some of his classmates who entered government positions didn't fare much better. Without connections, climbing the ladder was like a pipe dream. After years of peaceful development in society, class distinctions had gradually solidified, and the channels for upward mobility were almost blocked. For kids from rural areas like us, it's really difficult to stand out. I was able to stay at the Provincial People's Hospital thanks to Suro's connections. Once the divorce happens, those connections will be gone, and staying at the Provincial People's Hospital will be impossible. Humph, I have hands and feet, can I starve to death? The situation at the Provincial People's Hospital should have been resolved by now. Fang Hao thought about it and decided to call his mentor to inquire about Li Wei's condition. His mentor told him that Li Wei had already been transferred from intensive care and was now in a VIP ward. Fang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. Now that Li Wei was fine, the next step would be to deal with his own situation. As expected, his mentor informed him to come to the hospital before 3 o'clock the next afternoon. There was a meeting to discuss the medical dispute, and as the party involved, he needed to attend. After the call with his mentor, the nurse's call came in, notifying him to go to the hospital tomorrow afternoon to discuss doctor-patient relationships. She said directly, "Fang Hao, this has nothing to do with me. Can you take care of it tomorrow?" Fang Hao hung up the phone directly. This nurse had such poor quality, she was already trying to shirk responsibility before any conclusions had been reached. Did she think he was some kind of saint to willingly shoulder everything? For years, I've worked night shifts, tirelessly and kindly treated everyone. I just wanted to build good relationships, but unexpectedly, someone took me for a fool. Fang Hao sneered, it was his responsibility, and he would bear it himself. He wouldn't take on a single fraction of responsibility for things that weren't his. He went to have tea with Wei Wen and mentioned that he would be returning to the provincial capital tomorrow. Wei Wen brought up starting his own business and getting away from the county. Fang Hao thought that this was also a way out. He had considered the idea of quitting his job at the hospital and venturing out after divorcing his wife. However, his situation was different from Wei Wen's because he had children and Wei Wen didn't. Wei Wen, as a single man, could go out and explore, completely carefree. Fang Hao was different, he had elders to support and children to take care of. At my age, bearing so much, how will I live in the future? Fang Hao sighed in his heart. Chapter 22, Master Advises Patience. On the night before returning to the city, Fang Hao and his wife were intimate once again, still without any protective measures. His wife insisted it was safe during the safe period and that there wouldn't be any issues. The next day, upon returning to the city, Fang Hao noticed his wife's car was not in the garage. After inquiring, he found out that one of their company's accountants had borrowed it. He hoped the bug was still there. Back home, Fang Hao asked his wife to send some local specialties to their neighbor Ruili, as they had bothered her before. Ruili also came over as a guest. Fang Hao asked his wife to keep Ruili company, and he went into the study to quickly check the surveillance. Even when he wasn't at home, there were no visitors. It was mostly his wife alone at home. During the days he was away, his wife didn't visit her lover, and she didn't engage in social activities either. Could there really be no progress? Fang Hao felt something was amiss, but time didn't permit him to investigate thoroughly. He quickly copied the footage to his phone, planning to review it later. In the afternoon, Fang Hao went to the hospital. In the parking lot, he was stopped by the nurse. "Fang Hao, I spoke up for you because I felt it was unfair. You can't just turn a blind eye. You're exaggerating." "No, Fang Hao, I found out that this time the director is looking for a scapegoat. It's either you or me. I'm standing up for you. You can't avoid responsibility. Since the director is looking for someone to blame, why are you approaching me?" "No, Fang Hao, this involves you. You're a man, you have to take responsibility." The nurse was getting a bit agitated, and it seemed she wouldn't relent unless Fang Hao fully assumed the responsibility. Fang Hao was displeased. He said, "We have a meeting soon, and the decision will come from above. It's not up to you or me." He didn't want to argue with the nurse. Instead, he decided to visit his mentor and sound him out. His mentor was in a small meeting with the director and a few others, discussing recent policy changes, the condition of inpatients, and, most importantly, Fang Hao's case. "Mentor, how is my situation?" Seeing his mentor return, Fang Hao couldn't help but ask directly. His mentor replied, "The outcome may not be as ideal as you think, but it's not as bad as you fear. A real man can pick up and put down. Apologize to the patient's family later, you won't need to compensate, and your position is still secure." "Mentor, I haven't done anything wrong." Fang Hao felt a bit frustrated. His mentor told him to sit down, pulled up a chair, and sat next to him. He said, "Fang Hao, when you first came to work under me, I asked you to copy medical records day and night, remember all the data. Most people would have left. But you stayed. Why?" Fang Hao was a little stunned. He replied, "Because of a sentence from you, mentor. You said the real enemy is not others but oneself. In fact, mentor, you were right. The years I spent copying cases and remembering data have greatly helped me in the last 2 or 3 years. When an average person falls ill, the treatment plan is generally the same. For common ailments like a cold, fever, stomachache, the medications are more or less the same. Real challenging cases are very rare. Then I'll say it again, the real enemy is not others, only yourself. This time is unfair, and I also feel wronged. The patient hadn't eaten, you kindly bought something for the patient, and instead of appreciation, they got angry, and now they want you to apologize. The hospital is also scapegoating. They want to give you a warning. But what does it matter? Can they take away your medical skills? Can they take away the accumulation of these years? As long as you get an opportunity, you can soar. You can also choose not to apologize, not to be a doctor anymore, but then, will the effort and sacrifice of these years have any meaning? At this critical moment when you're about to succeed, giving up would be a waste of all your previous efforts. Mentor doesn't talk much, but you're a promising doctor. I don't want you to give up like this. Listen to mentor on this matter. Okay, I'll apologize. Fang Hao thought for a moment, following his mentor's advice. The hospital didn't terminate him, he only received a reprimand without compensation. The fact that he still had his position was a stroke of luck amid misfortune. He quickly joined his mentor for the meeting, where familiar faces from the hospital, including the deputy dean, office director, consultant, and the director of inpatient services, were present. Additionally, there were a few individuals in civilian clothing, the patient's family and their lawyer. The atmosphere was tense. "Sorry." Fang Hao entered and bowed to apologize to the patient's family. The middle-aged man slammed the table, shouting, "A simple apology won't settle this. My father is important, and if anything happens to him, your whole family won't be enough to compensate. You dare to upset my father, you're courting death." He attempted to approach Fang Hao aggressively, but the hospital leaders intervened, trying to mediate. "I'll endure." Fang Hao suppressed his emotions. After a commotion and several apologies, with Fang Hao being criticized by the leaders one by one, he was finally allowed to leave. Frustrated. He felt incredibly frustrated. He deeply experienced his own vulnerability and the lack of dignity. "Fang Hao, why didn't you take all the blame? Now I'm facing disciplinary action too." The female nurse angrily approached. "Get lost." Fang Hao shouted. She may have stood up for him, and he would remember that. Still, if she treated him like a fool, he wouldn't entertain her. He smoked a few cigarettes outside and received a call from his mentor, prompting him to return. "My clinic has been approved. Come with me to take a look." Fang Hao knew his mentor had been applying for the qualification to run a specialized clinic for 2 years without success. Having this qualification meant additional prestige and a significant increase in income. In reality, his mentor's medical skills were no less than those of so-called specialists. Fang Hao and his mentor went to the clinic building and indeed found a new sign outside a clinic. Dr. Su Yucheng, attending physician, doctor of medicine from Peking University, specializes in. Seeing his mentor's profile, Fang Hao exclaimed, "Mentor, did your doctoral thesis get approved?" "Yes. There's more good news. I inquired about your part-time postgraduate study. There's a chance it will be approved soon, and you'll be notified shortly. Your qualifications will be updated too." Su Yucheng entered the clinic, where only basic examination tools and a computer for paperless office work were present. Fang Hao was overjoyed. If his part-time postgraduate study was approved, his academic qualifications would be upgraded to a postgraduate level. This was better than having an undergraduate degree. He now understood why his mentor had asked him to apologize, to endure and be flexible. The things that belonged to him couldn't be taken away by others. After the dark comes the dawn. With the upgrade to a postgraduate degree, his salary and benefits would improve, making him stand out among his peers at the hospital. As his mentor said, the abilities that belonged to him couldn't be stripped away by others. Now, his divorce and his potential future paths looked even more promising. Just as his mentor had said, abilities that belong to you can't be taken away by others. Suro, just wait. I'll soon expose your ugly face. Chapter 23, The Clown's Performance. Before getting off work, Fang Hao was taken by the director of the inpatient department and a few others to visit Li Wei in the VIP ward and offer their apologies. Fang Hao had already lowered his head once, and with his postgraduate degree soon to be awarded, his future looked bright. At this moment, he wanted to downplay this major medical dispute and turn it into a minor issue. He began with several apologies, but Li Wei just glanced at him without responding. It was a middle-aged woman beside Li Wei who spoke up, "Don't just keep saying sorry. Explain where you went wrong." Fang Hao was stunned. In his heart, he felt he hadn't done anything wrong. It was them who had wronged him. If it weren't for him cherishing this job, he wouldn't be offering any apologies. He still said sorry 3 times without specifying where he had gone wrong. "All right, you can leave now." The middle-aged woman waved her hand dismissively, and Fang Hao walked out. However, he couldn't leave without the director's approval. The director didn't immediately allow Fang Hao to leave, he quietly asked for Li Wei's opinion. When Li Wei waved his hand signaling Fang Hao to leave, the director permitted him to go. Outside the ward, Fang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. This matter had finally passed. Yet, he still felt wronged. After all, he had acted with good intentions and ended up having to apologize. This hospital dynamic wasn't about a medical error but rather an incidental event caused by a well-intentioned action. Too frustrating. Later, Fang Hao was called into the office by the director. Inside, there was also the female associate director who had given him a hard time. "Director, what can I do for you?" The director said, "Fang Hao, the hospital has made a significant compromise on Li Wei's matter, resulting in substantial losses for the hospital. Originally, I wanted to dismiss you and have you compensate for the relevant medical losses, approximately around 80,000 yuan. However, your mentor insisted on protecting you, citing that you have 2 children to support and your economic situation isn't affluent. Nevertheless, there will still be consequences for you. This time, you'll have a personal demerit, and all benefits and awards within the next 3 years will be cancelled. Also, you can't stay in the inpatient department anymore. Director Luo, what position do you think we should arrange for Fang Hao?" He looked at the female associate director, and their eyes met, conveying his intention. The associate director understood and said, "Director, I noticed the infusion hall in the outpatient department is short-staffed. We can have Dr. Fang help out there." Fang Hao's heart sank. "Infusion hall? Isn't that the nurse's job?" The associate director said, "What's the matter? You don't want to follow the hospital's arrangement? Then, you can submit your resignation." Fang Hao's gaze became serious. Suppressing his anger, he realized he was currently in a weak position, and the other party could manipulate him. These people could take away his job opportunity and jeopardize his immediate career prospects. He recalled his mentor's words, "The only person who can defeat you is yourself." If he resisted now, it might relieve his anger temporarily, but he would lose his job, allowing the other party to achieve their goal. He thought about what his mentor had said. The abilities that belong to you can't be taken away by others. If he genuinely resisted, he would lose this job opportunity, letting the other side succeed in their plan. He took a deep breath and said, "I will follow the hospital's arrangement. I will obey the leadership's instructions. I will go to the infusion hall." The director made a phone call to make arrangements and said, "Dr. Fang, you can go there now. Find Director Lu in the outpatient department, he will assign your duties." "Okay." Fang Hao glanced at the 2 leaders in front of him, memorizing their faces. He thought to himself, revenge is a dish best served cold. I will remember this injustice, and the day will come when I settle the score. The infusion hall falls under the management of the outpatient department, overseen by Deputy Director Lu Jian. Lu Jian, a hefty man weighing over 200 kilograms, didn't have a medical background. He relied on connections to climb the ranks and lacked the courage to work in the front line of healthcare. Instead, he took on administrative roles. It was his responsibility to handle personnel matters in the outpatient department. When Fang Hao arrived, he noticed a large teacup and a stack of newspapers on Lu Jian's desk. Fang Hao introduced himself, saying, "Director Lu, I'm Fang Hao. Director Luo from the inpatient department asked me to report to you." "Luo? I know you. You caused quite a stir in the inpatient department. You're a troublemaker. My outpatient department is small, and I can't accommodate such a big shot like you. Lu Jian lifted his eyes and gave Fang Hao a quick look. Damn fatso, are you colluding with that nasty female director from the inpatient department to scheme against me? Fang Hao understood but maintained composure. He replied, Director Lu, your words are heavy. The matter in the inpatient department has been resolved, and I have apologized to all parties involved. I'm just an ordinary doctor here to learn. Director Luo arranged for me to come here, and the director from the inpatient department has already called you. Seeing that Fang Hao spoke without servility, maintaining a low posture with no sharpness, Lu Jian knew Fang Hao might have faced setbacks in the inpatient department. If he stepped on him again, Fang Hao had no ground to stand on. He called the head nurse to come in and assist Fang Hao in settling in. The head nurse was a middle-aged woman with average looks but a large chest, probably an E-cup. She had a noticeable feature, a mole at the corner of her mouth. She asked Fang Hao to familiarize himself with the outpatient hall first. Then, she had a private conversation with Lu Jian, saying, Why send a man over? Is he going to be a nurse? Lu Jian replied, A few days ago, there was a medical dispute in the inpatient department caused by Fang Hao. He couldn't stay there anymore and got sent down here to do some miscellaneous work. Let him administer injections in the hall, and if he makes a mistake, we can get rid of him. I understand. I'll make the arrangements. Oh, Lu, Jiang is on a business trip these days. You can come to my place during this time. Sure. After work, let's go for dinner, and then I'll come to your place. The two tacitly reached an agreement. The head nurse left and gestured for Fang Hao, who was already sitting in the infusion hall, to come over. She said, Xiao Fang, when you come here, you need to follow the arrangements. Here's the schedule, take a look. Fang Hao saw that he was scheduled for the evening shift, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Moreover, it started today, and he had to immediately begin the afternoon shift. He said, I have 2 children at home. The head nurse's expression darkened, and she interrupted, Whose family doesn't have children? Xiao Fang, if you can't overcome such a small difficulty, then maybe this profession isn't for you. I've heard about your situation. Right now, you can't afford to be picky. If you don't want to do it, many people are waiting to take your place. That fatso again? Fang Hao felt he should keep a list of enemies. His wife's lover, the director from the inpatient department, Li Wei, and his family were already on the list. Now, Lu Jian and even this head nurse should be added. They were all people he wanted to retaliate against. Are they all trying to force me out? Why not just fire me directly? Right, I entered with the help of Su Ro's parents' connections. If they fire me, they're not giving face to Su Ro's family. If I go now and beg Su Ro's parents for help, they might use their connections again to bring me back to the inpatient department or even to a better department. But I won't beg. Why should I owe them a favor when I'm about to divorce Su Ro? If the job becomes unbearable, I can always resign later. Understanding these complex relationships, Fang Hao decided to endure. He said, I'll follow the arrangement. After signing the documents, the head nurse turned around, and a cold smirk flashed across her lips. So, you're not willing to part with this job. Wait and see how I'll deal with you. Chapter 24, The Butcher Unveils the Cow. I can't leave the hospital, I'm on the evening shift and won't finish until 8 p.m. Could you take care of dinner for Xiaobao and Xiaobao's younger sister? Fang Hao called his wife, and her affirmative response, along with a reminder to take care of his health, touched him a little. Such a concern for his well-being was something he hadn't experienced in the past 4 years. In those 4 years of working night shifts, his wife had taken it for granted, even suggesting that young people needed to put in effort to reap rewards. I've put in 4 years of night shifts, only to harvest 4 years of cuckoldry. Fang Hao felt bitter inside. At the shift change, Fang Hao got acquainted with the nurses. Although they were attractive, in Fang Hao's eyes, they were all trash. After all, his wife was the #1 beauty in Jiangdong City. Even if the #1 beauty had a lover outside, living together for 4 years created immunity to the allure of other women. As a certain boss once said, I'm face blind. I live with her not because she's pretty, but because I have no idea whether she's pretty or not. The work in the infusion room had 2 parts. One involved preparing medications, attaching infusion cards, etc., inside, and the other was the work in the hall, including skin tests, blood draws, and infusions. This time, the head nurse assigned Fang Hao to handle skin tests, blood draws, and infusions in the hall. The workload in the infusion hall was related to the number of infusion treatments prescribed in the outpatient department. If the doctor up front had a bad conscience and prioritized IVs for all kinds of illnesses, the infusion hall would be swamped. Skin tests, blood draws, infusions, etc., were tasks Fang Hao was very proficient at. During medical school and internship in the inpatient department, he excelled in medical skills tests, topping the class. The head nurse, intent on making things difficult for Fang Hao, saw a woman with a baby entering for an infusion and immediately asked Fang Hao to handle it. If Fang Hao made a mistake, she would use it as an excuse to kick him out. Seeing the needle marks on the baby's hands, and the child being unruly during injections in areas like the head and ankles, the other nurses were relieved when the head nurse assigned Fang Hao. They sympathized with Fang Hao's plight and remembered how they were initially oppressed by the head nurse when they first arrived. A male nurse? Can you do it? The mother of the baby, assuming Fang Hao was a male nurse, questioned without politeness. Fang Hao glanced at the head nurse and said, "Nurse manager, how about you do it?" The head nurse replied, "Stop the nonsense and get to it. There are other patients waiting behind. Young man, you better be careful. If my son feels pain, I won't spare you." The mother seemed reluctant. "Your son feels pain? He's only 8 months old. Can he speak? Ask him to tell you." "Ridiculous. You see me as young, but I'm the father of 2 children." Fang Hao remained calm and said, "Sure, I'll be gentle." He took a moment to inspect the baby's hand instead of rushing to administer the needle. Gently stroking the baby's palm, the infant quickly relaxed and even smiled. Hearing the baby's laughter, the tension on the mother's face eased. She happily exclaimed, "Young man, you're good. My child has been sick for so long, and he hasn't smiled once until today. Your son is a brave little guy." Fang Hao didn't say much and proceeded to insert the needle smoothly, finding a vein and administering the infusion without any issues. "Mama, I want the brother to give me the shot, he doesn't hurt." After Fang Hao successfully administered the infusion for the little baby, the boy sitting in the adjacent seat retracted his hand, refusing the nurse to insert the needle. The boy's mother glanced at Fang Hao, noticing that he wore a mask. However, judging from his forehead and eyes, he seemed like a decent young man. Moreover, Fang Hao had just displayed a professional touch in comforting the baby. She then turned to the nurse and said, "Children don't know any better. Look." The nurse awkwardly smiled and looked at Fang Hao, saying, "Dr. Fang, could you handle this?" Fang Hao glanced at the head nurse. Though she looked displeased, she had no choice but to let Fang Hao handle it because the child's parents were not easy to deal with. In the hierarchy, the head nurse managed the nurses, so the nurse had to yield. She dared not provoke patience. If a patient complained to the hospital, she could lose her job. Being discerning, she saw the LV bag the boy's mother was carrying, genuine and worth tens of thousands. Would she dare to provoke such a patient? Fang Hao smoothly followed the procedure and successfully administered the infusion to the boy. "Mom, it really didn't hurt at all," the boy said, turning to his mother with a relaxed expression. The mother thanked Fang Hao and led her child to find a seat. After sitting down, she observed Fang Hao, realizing that he efficiently administered the injection each time, always succeeding on the first attempt and at a fast pace. In terms of speed, there was a basis for comparison since there were 3 reception positions at the nurse station, and 2 people were receiving treatment simultaneously. Fang Hao consistently finished first. Seeing that Fang Hao was proficient in his duties, and finding no grounds to create trouble, the head nurse had to leave. She needed to meet with Lu Jian and couldn't continue trying to make things difficult for Fang Hao. When the infusion hall was not busy, Fang Hao informed the on-duty team leader and went outside for a smoke. He also made a video call to his family, seeing Su Ro busy in the kitchen and the 2 kids in the living room. Unexpectedly, Chen Mei and Zhang Quan were visiting. Chen Mei. Fang Hao recalled the scene with Chen Mei a few days ago, and he felt a bit excited, experiencing a sense of stimulation. As the saying goes, a wife is not as good as a concubine is not as good as a stolen encounter, and a stolen encounter is not as good as being unable to steal. He and Chen Mei should be classified as the unable to steal category. But he didn't intend to steal again, at least not before divorcing his wife. He couldn't make such a low-level mistake, or he would risk exposing his affair. His wife had definitely had an affair. If he also had an affair, it would be a mutual explosion. If they forcibly divorced, he wouldn't achieve the desired effect of retaliating against his wife. What he feared most was if his wife accused him of having an affair too, threatening not to divorce him, and then continued her relationship with her lover. That would mean a lifetime of cuckoldry for him. This kind of thing absolutely must not happen. Chapter 25, Shouted at her. At 7:30 in the evening, Fang Hao received a call from Su Yucheng, asking him to come to the hospital. Su mentioned a new research topic and wanted to discuss it with Fang Hao in his office. Fang Hao explained that he was still on duty in the outpatient infusion hall and could only come after his shift, which would be in half an hour. Su Yucheng was surprised but didn't elaborate on the phone. He just asked Fang Hao to come over once he finished his shift. The outpatient infusion hall closed at 8 p.m. Patients who hadn't completed their treatments or had more to do were either assisted by nursing aides or transferred to the emergency infusion room. After finishing his shift, Fang Hao went to the inpatient department to find his mentor. Fang Hao, I've talked to the director and others. Your assignment to the outpatient department is temporary. There's a chance I'll bring you back. During this time, can you arrange things at home? I also want you to come to my clinic in the afternoon. Of course, this will be considered overtime. Sure, I'll do my best to arrange it. Fang Hao thought that without bonuses and rewards, a fixed salary wouldn't be enough. If the afternoon hours counted as overtime, he could at least earn some extra income. Currently, his working hours were from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the outpatient department, and the evening shift started at 4 p.m. In between, there were a few hours, and if he could assist his mentor, he could learn more and perhaps even earn some extra income. Following his mentor also had its perks. His mentor was an academician, having obtained a PhD from Peking Union Medical College. The next step would be a postdoctoral position, and then he could apply for the title of professor. Once a professor, the treatment and benefits would be different, whether in academia or a hospital. Fang Hao also planned to use this opportunity to pursue higher education. Without an academic background, he would be at a disadvantage in terms of specialization and professional titles. Following his mentor was an excellent opportunity because his mentor was an academic type. The new research topic involved liver-related studies, especially clinical surgical research. Fang Hao sensed that his mentor aspired to become the chief surgeon at the Provincial People's Hospital. The ambition was considerable. Indeed, once a chief surgeon, the position would be at the director level, and income and benefits would skyrocket. During Li Wei's craniotomy surgery, Fang Hao could only observe from the observation room and not personally perform the surgery. Li Wei was a patient under his mentor's care, but the surgery couldn't be performed by him. For an academic fanatic like his mentor, not being able to perform the surgery personally was a humiliation. Speaking of surgical knives, Fang Hao's hands couldn't help but tremble. Among the methods he considered for retaliating against his wife's lover, using a surgical knife to end that scoundrel's life one cut at a time was one option. Mentor, after my graduate student is born, I want to pursue a PhD like you. I'd like to follow your new research topic and write a doctoral thesis when the time comes. Fang Hao quickly expressed his loyalty. Good, let's work on it together. Su Yucheng's eyes lit up. He believed in Fang Hao's abilities, otherwise, he wouldn't have said so much in favor of Fang Hao during the recent doctor-patient conflict, exerting his influence to secure Fang Hao's position. Of course, Su Yucheng also believed that Fang Hao could succeed because of his persistence in providing cardiac resuscitation to the patient that led to a successful revival. This kind of persistence and dedication was well suited for academic research. They talked for a long time, until 10 p.m., before leaving. When Fang Hao returned home, it was already 10:30 p.m., and he found his wife and children were not at home. He called his wife and learned that she and Chen Mei had gone out to have fun, leaving the children at the neighbor's house. He directly hung up the call. Leaving the children with the neighbors and then going out to play, what kind of nonsense was this? Fang Hao felt a bit angry. He had been treated unfairly while doing good deeds in the hospital, facing opposition and hostility. Now, returning home, he had to endure an unfaithful wife and a deceitful mistress. He felt like he was on the verge of exploding at any moment. People often said that no matter how tired work was, returning home should be a harbor of happiness. However, in reality, his home was not happy at all. It was a huge embarrassment and deception. Going out with your lover, huh? We're getting a divorce. Get lost, you slut. Fang Hao composed this text message, almost sending it, but in the end, he deleted it. His wife's lover didn't even know who he was. Fang Hao hadn't made that scoundrel pay yet. There was no hurry to let the cat out of the bag. Wearing a cuckold's hat for 4 years, a few more days wouldn't make a difference. He calmed his emotions, went to the neighbor's house to pick up the children, expressing gratitude for the trouble. After helping the 2 little ones with their evening routine, he tucked them into bed. Fang Hao then went to the study, checked the surveillance footage, and confirmed that his wife had been at home all afternoon until the evening when Chen Mei and Zheng Quan came over. They had dinner together, and around 7:30 p.m., his wife entrusted the children to the neighbor before going out with Chen Mei and others. Worthless. Fang Hao didn't witness the scene that tormented him, the one where his wife and her lover were together. He wished to see it sooner to have solid evidence of her infidelity and to discover the identity of the lover. However, the thought of witnessing such a scene was the last thing he wanted. Forget it. This wretched woman isn't worth my concern. What does it matter what she does? Thinking this way, Fang Hao believed that a man needed a career. He opened his email and found research papers sent by his mentor, Su Yucheng, and began to study them seriously. About half an hour later, he heard his wife returning home. She first went to the baby's room and then came to the study. Fang Hao, why did you hang up on my call? And your phone was off, making me worry about you all. Calling him by name again, not addressing him as husband anymore. Fang Hao's heart twitched. His wife only showed a gentle side when she was satisfied by him, otherwise, she treated him as a less intimate person. This indicated that in their daily life, he hadn't entered her heart, and she didn't take him seriously. But this time, Fang Hao had no intention of coaxing her. He said, "Who is Chen Mei? She tried to seduce me, put a cuckold's hat on her husband. Why are you hanging out with people like her? Birds of a feather flock together. If she wants to cuckold her husband, do you also want to follow suit and put a cuckold's hat on your husband?" His tone was a bit harsh. You've misunderstood Mei Mei. She told me that night was just a joke. I'm tired, I'll rest first. Su Ro was a bit stunned. She didn't expect Fang Hao to speak to her so sternly tonight. This seemed to be the first time in several years. After mentioning the cuckold's hat, the icy and unfamiliar look in her husband's eyes stabbed at her, and she couldn't meet his gaze. With a soft defense, Su Ro left the room. In the room, Fang Hao's breath was rapid. He felt a sense of liberation but also a hint of conflict. From dating Su Ro to marrying her, having children together, and up until tonight, he had never shouted at Su Ro like this. He had always treated her as a delicate wife to be cherished. He used to treat Su Ro like a porcelain doll, fearing it might break even when held delicately, treating her like honey, afraid it might melt even when held in the mouth. However, finding out that his daughter was not his biological child made him feel disgusted, something he had never felt before toward Su Ro.